Do you believe you're a good person? You're calm, polite, patient. You don't like conflict. You forgive easily. You're proud of how much you can take before you break. People trust you. Admire your self-control. Say you're kind. Say you're safe. But tell me, what if all of that is a lie? What if your kindness is not love, but fear? Fear of being rejected. Fear of becoming what you secretly judge. Fear of your own darkness. You've spent years, maybe your whole life, trying to be good, whatever that means. And slowly, without noticing, you became a mask, because the world rewards the mask, the calm one, the nice one, the one who never complains. But behind that perfect image, there's a crack. And behind the crack, there's something you don't want to see, something ancient, instinctive, raw. It's not your weakness. It's not your trauma. It's not your failure. It's your shadow. Carl Jung gave it a name, but you felt it. In the silence, in the moments when you flinch at your own thoughts, when you wonder, why did I say that? Why did I push that person away? Why does this part of me feel so foreign? The shadow isn't a monster in the dark. It's what you buried to be accepted. It's everything you were told not to feel, not to say, not to be. And here's the truth. The more you ignore it, the more it controls you. So ask yourself again, with no filters, no lies, are you really a good person or just a carefully managed illusion? You have a story about who you are. You believe you're in control, that your choices are conscious, that your reactions are reasonable. You imagine yourself as someone balanced, someone rational, someone who knows what they're doing. But if that were true, why do you explode over small things? Why do you hurt people you care about without meaning to? Why do you judge strangers, friends, even yourself, without even thinking? Why do you sabotage the very things you say you want? Opportunities, relationships, peace. It's not because you're evil. It's because you're divided. There's the you want to be, the calm, patient, wise version, the ideal self. And there's the you that you've buried, the impulsive, angry, jealous, fearful self, the unconscious self. And every time the unconscious breaks through the cracks, you feel ashamed, you feel confused. You say, I don't know what came over me, but Jung knew. And he said it without mercy. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The job you lost, the friendship you destroyed, the relationship you couldn't save, the anger you thought was righteous, the silence you thought was wise. None of it was chance. It was the shadow, the part of you refused to see, the part pulling the strings while you pretend to be the puppet master. The truth is simple. You are not just who you think you are. You are also what you repress, what you fear, what you deny. And the longer you ignore it, the more it shapes your life without your permission, without your awareness, without your forgiveness. This isn't about philosophy. This isn't about psychology. This is about you who keeps asking why life feels so heavy, why nothing ever feels enough, why you keep getting in your own way. You who smiles in public but collapses in silence, who says, I'm fine, but isn't. You who's tired of pretending, tired of being good, tired of the weight you can't name. This is your moment, not to fight, not to escape, but to look inside, really look, not at your dreams, not at your goals, at your shadow, at everything you've buried, just to be loved, at the rage you swallow with a smile, at the envy you disguise as opinion, at the fear you call caution, at the shame you keep dressing in virtue. Carl Jung didn't invent the shadow. He revealed it, defined it, described it for what it is. The shadow is the part of ourselves we deny, not just our flaws, but also the power we fear we can't control. It's not just your darkness, it's your disowned truth, your authentic self, silenced. You weren't born broken. You were born whole, but over time, you started hiding pieces of yourself to be accepted, to be safe, to survive. And now those pieces are still there, waiting, watching, growing stronger in the dark. This is not about healing overnight. It's about having the courage to begin, to stop pointing outward, to stop blaming everyone and everything, to stop running, because the longer you avoid your shadow, the more it becomes your fate. You don't need to fight it. You need to face it and finally say, I see you. I'm not afraid anymore. Picture a child, wild, free, loud, radiant. She laughs without permission. He cries without shame. They scream when they're angry. They dance when they're happy. They speak what they feel, without filters, no masks, no guilt, no fear of being too much. That child was you, before the world told you who you were supposed to be, before the rules, before the labels, before the voice inside started saying, don't say that, don't feel that, don't want that. It began subtly. A raised eyebrow, a disappointed tone, a withheld hug, a punishment for being honest, a reward for being silent. Little by little you learned that anger makes you bad, that desire makes you selfish, that sadness makes you weak, that being too loud, too wild, too real makes you unlovable. So you adapted. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You apologized for existing too boldly. You buried your instincts. You swallowed your questions. You shrank. And what didn't fit the mold was locked away into the basement of your psyche, into the place Jung called the shadow. Not destroyed, not healed, just forgotten. You became what the world rewarded. The good boy, the sweet girl, the obedient student, the quiet worker, the nice adult. But underneath that image, the real you waited. With fists clenched, with eyes wide open, with a voice you stopped using. Because what was acceptable became your identity, and what was true became your secret. That's how the shadow is born. Not in trauma alone, but in the quiet moments when you chose to betray yourself just to belong. And every time you did it, you left a piece of you behind. Now the question is, how many pieces have you lost just to be loved? What happens to everything you silence, to the rage you never released, to the desires you never confessed, to the dreams you told yourself were too much, to the parts of you that were too loud, too bold, too alive? They don't disappear. They go underground. They become the shadow, and the more you repress, the more it grows. The more you smile through pain, the more it festers. The more you stay quiet to keep the peace, the more it roars in the dark. The more you hide your ambition, your anger, your truth. The more power you give to what you've buried. You thought you were being mature, balanced, spiritual, controlled, but really, you were just building a storm inside your chest because the shadow doesn't go away. It waits, and it feeds on. Every I'm fine that was a lie. On every it's nothing when it was everything. On every time you said yes when your soul was screaming no. And then it starts to leak. In your addictions, in your patterns, in the way you sabotage what you love, in the way you push people away, in the voice that tells you you're not enough. You don't realize it at first. It looks like procrastination, like bad luck, like a toxic relationship, like burnout, like losing interest in everything that once made you feel alive. But it's not life turning against you. It's your shadow, knocking from the inside, trying to be heard, trying to be seen, trying to come back, because it is you, just the parts you've exiled. Carl Jung understood this. That which you most need will be found where you least want to look, and you've been looking everywhere, except where it matters most, within. Because facing your shadow means confronting the fact that you were the one feeding the very thing that's been breaking you. You still believe the darkness is out there. That evil has a face. That cruelty belongs to monsters, not people like you. But what if that's just another illusion, a comfortable lie to help you sleep? In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted an experiment at Stanford University. He took 24 ordinary college students, no criminal records, no mental illness, just normal guys. They were divided randomly. Half became guards, half became prisoners. The goal? Simulate a prison for 2 weeks. It lasted only 6 days, because what happened in that basement was beyond anyone's expectations. The guards, young, educated, polite men, turned violent, controlling, humiliating. They deprived prisoners of sleep, forced them to perform degrading tasks, watched them break, and kept pushing. The prisoners, also just students, cried, broke down, became submissive, hopeless. There were no real bars, no criminals, no real threat, just role play. But something happened, something terrifying. The mask of authority unleashed what had been hidden. The shadow, Zimbardo called it the Lucifer effect. The moment a good person crosses the line and becomes something else entirely. Not because they're broken, not because they're born evil, but because the context allowed it. Because when the rules vanish, when the mask is removed, when no one's watching, the repressed self steps forward. And this is where Jung meets. Jung said the shadow is personal. Zimbardo showed it can become collective. Put someone in a system that removes accountability, and the hidden becomes visible. Suddenly, the calm becomes cruel. The quiet becomes controlling. The respectful becomes terrifying. You think that could never be you, but you don't know what you're capable of until the mask falls, until the structure collapses, until the darkness finds a door. You've kept your shadow buried. But what if life gave it space? What if no one was watching? What if you were given power and without consequences? Would you still be who you think you are, or would something else finally take over? You think your shadow is asleep, that as long as you behave, smile, stay calm, it stays buried. But the shadow doesn't need your permission to act. It only needs your denial. And the more you ignore it, the more it speaks, in ways you don't even recognize. It shows up in the tension in your jaw when someone challenges your opinion, in the cold smile you give to someone who outshines you. It shows up when you judge someone for being too much, too loud, too proud, too free. You call it discernment. But it's not. It's projection. It's fear. It's envy. It's your shadow, wearing your voice. It shows up when you feel irrational irritation, not because someone hurt you, but because they remind you of the part of you that you've killed. It shows up in your criticisms, the ones you believe are constructive. But deep down, you know they're just a mask for your own discomfort. It shows up when you see someone express confidence, and something in you recoils. Not because they're arrogant, but because you were taught that confidence was a crime. It shows up in your niceness. The way you smile when you're angry. The way you stay silent when your boundaries are violated. The way you say yes when every part of you is screaming no. That's not peace. That's repression. And repression always has a cost. You pay with self-sabotage. You delay what you love. You choose what's safe over what's real. You abandon the people who see too much. You sabotage the things that ask too much of you. And when it all collapses, when the job fails, the relationship ends, the dream dies, you say, I don't know what went wrong. But deep down, you do. Your shadow was acting, and you weren't listening. The shadow doesn't scream. It whispers, in overthinking, in cynicism, in exhaustion. It's not obvious. That's what makes it dangerous. Because as long as you keep calling it just my way, you'll never see that it's not you who's in control anymore. You think you're a good person, and maybe you really try to be. You help, you listen, you forgive, you keep the peace, you try to do the right thing, even when no one's watching. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You are not as good as you think you are. And that's not the problem. The problem is that you don't know it. You've built a moral identity, A version of yourself that's kind, honest, mature. And now, you use that image like a shield because, if you're good, you never have to face what's buried beneath it. You never have to admit that sometimes you manipulate, that sometimes you enjoy the failure of others, that you envy more than you'd ever confess, that your patience isn't always patience. Sometimes it's passive aggression in disguise. You spiritualize your fear. You romanticize your silence. You call detachment a virtue. But it's just emotional avoidance. You've turned being nice into a religion, and now you're its prisoner. You cling to moral superiority because deep down, you're terrified of what you might find if you looked behind the curtain. But Jung said it without hesitation. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You want peace, you want healing, you want clarity, but you don't want to go where those things live, in the dark, in the rage, in the shame, in the impulses you pretend don't exist. You think you've outgrown the darkness, but really, you've just covered it in light, a fake light, a blinding light, one that doesn't illuminate, but hides. Your virtue is not always strength. Sometimes it's fear in costume. Sometimes it's the shadow playing dress up as a saint, and the longer you keep pretending, the more it owns you. You don't need to stop being good. You need to stop being afraid of who you are when you're not trying to be good. That's where your truth lives. Not in the part that shines, but in the part you refuse to see. You've seen it now. The cracks, the weight, the patterns, the pain that wasn't random. And for the first time, you're not blaming the world. You're not blaming fate. You're not blaming them. You're looking inward. Finally. Honestly. That's where the real work begins. Not the work of fixing yourself and you were never broken, but the work of reclaiming yourself. The parts you buried, the truths you exiled, the fire you silenced. Carl Jung called it shadow work. Not a method, not a trend, but a reckoning, a return to the self you abandoned to survive. It's not comfortable. It's not fast. It's not pretty, but it's necessary. And it begins with this, the shadow journal. Sit with yourself and write what you'd never say aloud. Not what's true, but what's real. Write the envy. Write the hate. Write the shame. Write the lust. Write the pride. Write the thoughts that scare you. The ones you've buried so deep you forgot they were there. Write them and don't judge them, because they're not who you are. They're parts of who you've refused to meet. Then, start watching. Observe your triggers. Who irritates? You? Who makes you feel small? Who do you judge the most, and why? Because every judgment is a mirror. Every irritation is a signal. Every projection is a buried fragment begging to be seen. And when it rises, don't run. Speak to it. Say, I see you. You are part of me, but you are not in control. That's the turning point. Not silence, not war, not denial. Dialogue. The I.
Shadow doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be acknowledged, not feared, but understood, not exiled, but integrated. This is how power returns, not by pretending you're only light, but by walking into the dark and saying, even here,
I am still whole. There comes a moment in every journey inward where you can no longer lie to yourself. No more distractions, no more masks, no more blaming the past, the world, or the people who hurt you. Just one truth remains. You either face the pain of transformation or remain a prisoner of the pain you already know. It's not easy. Change never is. Looking at your shadow means reliving everything you thought you escaped. The rage, the rejection, the parts of you that scared your parents, your teachers, your lovers, and maybe even you. You've built a life avoiding this, carefully, beautifully, strategically. But what has it cost you? How many relationships have you ruined? Because you couldn't say what you really felt? How many dreams have you buried because your fear was dressed as responsibility? How many times have you sabotaged joy because joy made you vulnerable, and you never learned how to be held? You've been strong. You've survived. But survival has an expiration date. At some point, you stop surviving and start repeating. Same. patterns. Same regrets, same voice in your head saying, I thought I was past this. You weren't past it. You were just avoiding it. But now, the shadow is in the room, not to haunt you, not to destroy you, but to ask one question. Are you finally ready to come home to yourself? Because the door has always been there. But it only opens when you stop running. You've made it this far. And that means something. It means you're ready to stop hiding, to stop pretending, to stop running from the part of you that was never meant to be destroyed, only understood. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your invitation to depth, to freedom, to wholeness. You don't have to fix yourself. You have to face yourself completely, without filters, without fear. And now the question becomes, what part of your shadow do you avoid the most? The rage you pretend isn't there, the pride you've renamed as humility, the desire you smother with guilt, the voice you silence to be accepted? Bring it here, write it, speak it, expose it, not for shame, but for healing. Drop a comment below, not to impress, but to confess, because the more we speak what's hidden, the less power the darkness has over us. This space is not for the perfect, it's for the honest. Let this be your mirror and your map, because the shadow isn't the end of your story. It's where your story finally begins to tell the truth.